what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, but there's also a link in the info box below the video once the video has rendered. But most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Sharing the show increases the live audience, of course, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you are new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Chocolate Saying. Who else we got? Arwin, Mark, and Sleeping Warrior. How are you all doing?
Hello, gentlemen. We're great. Thank you.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Right, what's on the docket for today?
I think we're going to look at the Earth calculator, aren't we? The curve calculator.
Curve calculator, is that so?
Yeah. Come on, Riley. Tell us what your opinion is on that, or what you discovered. Oh, he's gone.
He might be on the phone or something. Great start to the show.
He's back again.
You back with the Sleeping Warrior?
There's two of him now. I can see two of him on the screen.
I think it's going to be one of those days.
I was going to say, I got two of them.
One of
That's too many, isn't it?
Great start, guys. Great start. So, curve calculator. What of it, Mark?
Well, you can do it. You can work it out yourself by going along with their assumptions. 69 miles is 1 degree around the circumference of a circle, isn't it? Going by their figures, 69 miles is 1 degree. If you've got one guy standing at one point and another one 69 miles away, the shortest distance between those two guys is right through the curve. So you've immediately created yourself a triangle going from each man and then down to the center of the Earth. And so you can work out from that the height of the bulge in front of you. Did you follow that?
Yeah. So far, so good.
But before you went live, Anthony said that he feels that the Earth curve calculator is heavily biased towards the ball. But we don't really need the curve calculator. We can do it ourselves.
Yeah, well, I feel it stands in contradiction to what they assert about gravity, which is to say that you're at the top of the ball. Well, if you're to be angling yourself backwards and looking at a ball that is above you, that necessitates that being the top and you being below it. So it kind of contradicts what my ideas, I'm not going to say I'm correct, but my ideas of what gravity was defined as.
Right, okay. And if there's a guy that was 69 miles away from you, the shortest distance between you and him is right through the bulge, isn't it?
Yeah, right. I've got you.
Yeah, so that's the bulge that will obscure the boats going over the horizon or whatever. We don't really need Metabunk to tell us what that bulge should be. It's just a handy tool to use, but I'm trusting that it's correct. But I think Anthony's going to tell us that it's not when he comes back.
Sure. I know Chris Monk had said a couple of times in the past that the calculator was totally fallacious, and even if you were going to calculate how you would look on a sphere, it wouldn't work out to what they calculate it to be.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can just work out the drop ourselves. Oh, he's away. He's gone. Maybe that's going to be a conversation for another day.
Well, you're only working out drop if you presuppose you're on a sphere to begin with. That's kind of my argument. You know, you only have a necessity to work out how much drop if you're automatically on a sphere already.
Yeah, when we put our argument forward, though, we will use Metabunk just to humour the ballers, don't we? I mean, we don't believe it anyway, but we will use it to show how fallacious the idea of a ball is.
Yes, exactly. We're debunking their presuppositions. So how are you, Chocolate? What have you got to say for yourself?
Chocolate's on mute.
I'm good. I'm literally traveling right now, so talking is going to be a little rough because you guys can hardly hear me as it is, right?
Yeah, you're loud and clear, actually, believe it or not.
That's hilarious. When I'm sitting in my house quiet, you guys can't hear me. Yeah, but I'm good. What's going on with you guys? Anybody found Curve?
Negative. Sorry.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Maybe Arwin's found Curve. You found any Curve, Arwin?
Oh yeah, plenty.
Where did you find it?
Well, in this kind of heat, women don't tend to dress up a lot. So, plenty of curves to be found.
I hear that, or
Hey Nathan,
Yeah.
the hangout the other day, suddenly like the chat replay, it was completely gone except the things that I posted myself. What was that about? Did you have that as well?
No, when it's rendering that happens, it's just glitchy. If you went back to it now, it'd probably all be just as is. Also, at the top of the chat, when it's on a replay, there's two types of chat. You can have top chat or all chat. And I don't really understand the difference between the two, but there is definitely a difference, apparently.
No, it was just the default, but the only thing that was replaying was the comments that I made.
Just a glitch, I can only assume. I've
Okay,
never had
really
that.
Weird. Never seen that before.
One thing I did notice is that before the show goes live, the comments in the chat room still go on the recording. So if you press play on one of the, the rendered videos, not live, you'll see the chat replay, but you can scroll up and see what's happened and what's been said before the show went live, which I thought was quite cool.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Yeah, it gives the chat a bit more relevance. I've tried to do that. You can obviously see on screen now. I've got the chat on screen because I wanted it to be contained within the show. It's part of the show, and YouTube have done exactly the same. I'm sure it's not as a consequence of me doing it. It's been in OBS for a long time as an overlay. But my point is that people want to see what's been said during the chat, and it always used to frustrate me after you did a live show. You'd go to comments, and it's like you've got one or two comments because everyone's moved on. Doesn't matter if you had 200 people watching, they're all on to the next video rather than commenting, and they've left dozens in the chat feed, but none in the actual comment section. Not that that's a problem these days with this being so controversial, but yeah.
Yeah, people like live comments a lot more than afterthoughts.
Yeah, for sure. Did any of the people in the chat actually share the show? Say it at the beginning of every single show.
Are we live now? Nathan?
Say again?
Are we live?
Yeah, we should be. Yeah, we're
What?
live. 80 people watching.
Okay, yeah, I didn't get a notification again. Like the last hangout, I just didn't see anything. It's still not in there. So I had no idea what was going on.
Can't help you, I don't know. Sorry, I can't give you an answer. I don't know the reason.
Yeah, but that was the reason why I was basically, by accident, I still had like the back chat open and I saw like the ballers in there and I thought like, they're just whining and stuff. So I'm just going to snipe them for fun because it's offline anyway. And then later I heard that there was a show and apparently I'd been sniping them while during the live session. That was not my intent. So sorry about that.
Yeah, he was a bit
And
annoyed
Dom,
about
I
that.
actually sniped you 4 times. So, but yeah, if I had known that it was live, I wouldn't have done that. I'm not like that. So sorry about that.
I just
Yeah.
shared it on Facebook.
I said to him at the time, who cares? You're here now, who cares?
Next time somebody during the hangout says, "Hey, Arwen is sniping me," would be nice if somebody would actually mention something in the Skype, like, "Hey, are you doing this?" Because then I could have noticed that there was another live hangout going on. I had no idea. So, just saying.
Kids dug out all the noisy toys, so I'm struggling to hear some of what you're saying. I'm getting the general gist, though. Damn you noisy toys. How you doing, Sleeping Warrior? You sorted out your woes?
I'm not sure. Depends on how far away she gets from the computer. Can you hear me?
Yeah, coming through loud and clear.
Yeah, so I've got a question for you, right? And this is one of those ones where if I'm wrong, I'd rather you tell me rather than let me think it might be correct. Suppose we're looking at this 1,000-foot mountain, and as we go further back and get away from it, that mountain changes its size and it shrinks, something called perspective. Well, when they do the curve calcs, I can see them using a geometric curve calculation for the sphere that we live on. Shouldn't there be an adjustment for how small the thing that we're looking at is? Because the 1,000-foot mountain is only 1,000 foot when you stood in front of it, but when it's like 30 miles away, it's a pixel. So shouldn't there be an adjustment, not because of the geometry, but also because of the size of the thing that you're looking at and the distance away that you're looking at? It shrinks.
Yes, Anthony, you're right. I've looked into that before as well, and the Morgile did quite maybe about a year ago. He mentioned that as well. That not only have you got it behind a curve, it's also going smaller. So
Yeah.
the curve calculator is very biased towards the globe.
Well, there doesn't seem to be a reduction for the angular size on the object that we're the target, right? That to me
Exactly.
seems to be...
No. It's not saying how much angular size of the object you're seeing. It's saying of what you can see, how many meters of it is obscured. So how much is left. So, for example, if you've got a zoom length that's double the length of the P900, just for argument's sake, and you have that same amount that they presuppose would be obscured, and I think it's 200 to 300 meters, depending on how much refraction they want to bring in. Well, obviously you could make that bigger, physically larger in your field of view on that camera if you had double the amount of zoom, right? But you'd still be seeing of the actual mountain in their presuppositional mathematics 200 to 300 meters. So I didn't jump all over you yesterday. I tried to stop you because I was on a different point, not because I was trying to disagree. But no, I don't agree with you. Sorry.
Hello.
Hey, Ranty.
You all right?
Very well. Having a disagreement with Anthony.
Okay. He's gone on mute, I think.
He might be having technical problems. It might be my opportunity to reassert my position, which is to say that if you are going to beg the question, presuppose that we've got a radius value that is scientifically proven, which we don't, and then use that to presuppose how much curvature we see obstructing things, which also we don't see. You know, we've got to add the looming in afterwards. But given all of that, if you are to use those mathematics to do all of those things, they are presenting you with, once you actually see, regardless of how big it is in your field of vision, how much of the mountain you're actually seeing. So 200 to 300 meters for whatever it's called. I've forgotten the name of the mountain already.
Can we not call it a disagreement?
Well, we can, other than it's black and white in their presuppositional mathematics that what they're saying you should see, regardless of how big it is in your camera, is 200 to 300 meters of the mountain. That's what their maths begs the question and does. That's just what it does. It doesn't make it right, wrong, or indifferent, because if you zoom right out, obviously it's going to be much smaller on the horizon. So to say that you can't see it on the horizon, well, no, without zoom you can't. But if you can, in their presuppositional world of globes, you should see 200 to 300 meters of it, depending on conditions. That's what they presuppose. So, you know, you are wrong. I hate to say it, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
What about the hump, though? I mean, should the hump also?
Well, hang on. Yeah, that's the point. Sorry, let me interrupt rudely, and I don't mean to be rude. If I'm wrong, then the hump is an issue because the hump is half the distance between you and the target. But whatever the value, let's just say that the mountain's 1,000 feet, right? And there's a hump in front of you, 100 foot. That 100 feet, half the distance away, is effectively double its height because it's half the distance. So although it's 100 feet of risen, it should be double its height because it's actually half the distance to what you're actually looking at.
Wrong.
Does that make sense?
No. It's number one, the distance to the hump is factored into the mathematics with distance to horizon. So it's not going to be, you know, hundreds of miles away. It's always a set distance, and it's also shown in the calculation. But secondly, what they are giving you in terms of that 200 to 300 feet, they are giving you based on how much you can see above their presupposed hump. So that's how much of the mountain they presuppose you should see if you lived on a sphere world. Above the hump.
Yeah, but the hump's half the distance away. That would be bigger from our perspective than what the actual math tells relative to the target. So what it seems that you're arguing orthographically, and I'm suggesting that we don't see a world orthographically, we see our world prospectively. And that's the reason why there should be an angular size reduction on the maths.
And there is, until you get a zoom camera.
No, where is it in the maths?
Yeah, it reduces in angular size to the point where you cannot see it anymore with the naked eye, and then you get a 2 times optical zoom and you can see it very small on the horizon. Then you get a 10 times optical zoom and it gets a bit bigger on the horizon. Then you get 100 times optical zoom and it's filling your camera. So the angular size, in terms of what you can see in your camera, is going to change with zoom. But how much they say is above that hump is in the mathematics. And they say we should see 200 to 300 meters depending on refraction levels. It's all nonsense for the benefit of the audience. This is all pie in the sky nonsense because we don't live on a sphere. And the only way you can even postulate that we do is to beg the question automatically and then insert mathematics that kind of match with reality sometimes. In this instance, not at all. Got a 1,000-foot mountain that we can see. They say we should see 200 to 300 feet of it above the hump. You're saying because of the angular size at that distance it should be gone. Well, yeah, to the naked eye. That's negated by zoom.
Yeah, but right, perhaps just hear me out. Just present my screen and let me try and persuade you that my point is valid. I know you've
sure.
given your.
I'm open to being wrong here. If you want to prove me wrong, I'm well up for it.
So, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
This is obviously the MetaFlump website. If we're looking at said mountain at 1,000 feet in height, as that mountain goes further away from you, it shrinks in height from your perspective. But what happens here is when they're applying the hidden value as though the mountain is appearing in your line of sight as the same angular size that it was when it was in front of you. So what I'm saying is, no, actually it should be reduced in height because of the distance away you're looking at. And then the hidden value should be applied to the reduced size in height because of perspective. This is an orthographic view, in my opinion. This is how it seems to be.
Yeah, you're still wrong, though. You're talking about relative height. And but that's not what they're showing in the calculation. They're saying how much of the land should be visible as opposed to its relative height to you as an observer. That's not what they're saying. They're saying if you could see this land, or they're saying as a prediction, if you went out and looked at this mountain based on its altitude above the sea level and your distance from it and your altitude above sea level, you should see 200 to 300 meters of it. That's what their math says. So if you plug in the figures, 38 miles, 3 feet, there you go. So hidden is 728 refracted, 858. So about 200 to 300 feet should be seen according to their presuppositional mathematics of fantasy globe world.
But does it include looming?
It does include looming. Yes, that would be standard refraction, Arwin.
Right, okay. So in that case then, right, based on what you've just said, it would appear that from Alkay's observation distance of 38 miles, and we said the meter, I didn't agree with the meter, but let's just say for argument's sake it was the meter, it would mean that the horizon is just 2.1 miles away, right?
Correct.
But on this it's showing that the horizon is half the distance.
That's not to scale, but yes, absolutely, that was the first thing I said. So you asserted something like, well, it must be, I can't remember how many miles you said away. And no, it's actually considerably closer, especially at low altitude when you're very close to the sea level. Yes, the horizon is very close to you. But that doesn't alter where they presuppose the land at that distance should pop above that horizon, no matter how close it is to you. It's preposterous to propose that the horizon is a couple of miles away when looking out at 30 miles, seeing the entirety of a mountain. I mean, this all falls to pieces with this observation, regardless of if it should all be gone or we should, according to their maths, see 200 to 300 metres of it, because we don't see 200 to 300 metres of it. We basically see all of it, with a tiny amount of obstruction on the horizon, as we see time and time again, depending on conditions.
Nathan, let me just apply this then. If according to the maths, the horizon is 2.12 miles of 38. So let's do 2.12 miles divided by the 38. That should give us the percentage difference. So it's 5.5% of the total distance. So let's apply 5.5% of the total distance. So basically, the scale here, we're going to have to guess it. But if we put this to be there, that would be the horizon would be half. But we're looking for 5%, right? So what we're trying to do is get a scale roughly for 5% of the distance relative to the observer. So half of the bulge there is half. So we've got 25 would be there. So we need to go a bit further around. So let's just push this a bit more. Actually, I'm running out of screen. Let me just, there we go. We're trying to get the horizon. Actually, it doesn't allow for me to do it. That's just, oh, hang on, no. Well, the most I can actually get out of this, and correct me if I'm wrong here, seems to be, oh, there we go. Right, okay, so we need to still go for 5%. So there's 50%. So 25's in the middle. So we're about half of 25. So that's about 13%. So we need to go a bit more. So hang on, just bear with me. Let's zoom out a bit more. Drop this down a bit. Zoom out.
Yeah, but now you would be technically looking halfway the
quarter of the
planet,
way around the Earth now, Anthony. This is not to scale. So you're now quarter of the way around the Earth. You're now sat on the equator.
To represent 5% of the distance that we're observing this thing, because that would then be proportionate, right? Am I getting this wrong?
I keep saying this is not a scale drawing. Even they would disclose that.
Okay, but it's kind of weird because
it's
of
hard
all
work,
the
Anthony.
angles
At the
involved
moment,
in
for
there.
all the ballers watching, I am currently fighting their argument for them. I mean, all we're doing is begging the ball question, and I'm literally backing up their arguments right now. This is bad.
Yeah, I understand. But according to their maths, it requires that the horizon be 2.12 miles away of 38 miles. So that represents a 5% distance. And I'm trying to replicate the 5% distance to get the scale right. So what I'm saying is, if the horizon value is correct on their maths, now let's just say that I can't get it any bigger, but there's 50% of the distance. So half of that's 25, which would be there. I'm about 10% of the total distance. And I can't get it closer. This is as far away as I can get it to make it match. So basically, to get that value there of the horizon accurate, that's what it needs to look like. And we're still not getting there. 5% is virtually nothing. So this maths doesn't appear to work if the angular size reduction is catered for in the maths, right?
Well, I keep saying this. The angular size reduction is not what they are measuring. They are measuring how much of the land should be obscured or visible, depending on which way you want to look at it, as opposed to the angular size. What you're arguing is what you would get completely negated with a zoom camera. So the angular size becomes irrelevant if you can fill your frame of your camera with it.
But I accepted that, but then Mark Doxey correctly brought up the point of the bulge, and I agree with Mark. Then if you're going to say that, then the bulge then becomes an issue, because if you're saying that the angular size is not there because it's been adopted by the maths.
Gone quiet. Is everybody still there?
I'm still here.
Are you still there, Nathan?
Yes, I am, yeah. Sorry. Distracted for a moment.
Okay, I'm trying to get this in my mind as well. Assuming that we're on a flat surface, say it's a 100-meter racetrack, I'm 5 foot, and halfway along there's a 5-foot gate or fence, and at the other end there's another guy that's 5 foot. Now, do I only just see the tip of his head? No, I don't. From my point of view, he's a lot smaller, but the gate also has altered in size from my perspective. And now we're going to bend that 100-meter racetrack into a curve.
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just trying to get my head around, well, where does the lines of sight go when it's converted into a ball or a curve? I think the guy at the end is going to be a lot smaller than the gate. And I need to rethink through it all.
Yeah, you need to brush up on your double talk, double speak, so you can get your head round explaining it.
Yeah, okay.
It's total nonsense, isn't it? To assert that the horizon's 3 miles away when you're seeing stuff that is at the distance it's supposed to be sat on the horizon. The horizon is varied based on the visibility. That's it.
Sorry, did you ask me a question?
No, we said it's all nonsense. You know, and in order to explain this, or you know, you need to be very well versed in doublespeak.
I just find that if there's no angular size reduction because
Can you mute, Mark? You're causing a bit of echo.
Sorry.
If there's no angular size reduction because of reasons, whatever they may be, right or wrong, then the bulge, like Mark pointed out, is an issue because the bulge then becomes disproportionately small because it should be bigger. The bulge needs to be prospectively bigger, but also the horizon also becomes an issue. So it's like, for me, it's like, hang on a sec. If Dawn won't accept that, he should be basically gone, no matter what, and that's his position. And the Rumpus claims that it's perfectly supporting a spherical Earth, and it clearly isn't. How do we get conclusion on this point? Because there seems to be an awful lot of porky telling.
Yeah, on the one hand, I completely agree with you, but on the other hand, it was painful yesterday when you've got the Globers saying you're wrong in your assertion about the, you know, being completely gone. If you want to claim that from the naked eye, yeah, it would be completely gone. You wouldn't see it. You've got no hope. But you've only got to double your focal length of your camera, and then you can make it bigger. But how much of it is actually physically appearing, regardless of how big it is in the frame of your camera, that's what they're calculating and claiming in terms of how much you should see. And it's completely wrong. That's the main focus here. I'm going to reassert this again. They've claimed we should see 200 to 300 feet of... What's the mountain called?
Elsa
Craig.
Elsa Craig.
So we should see 200 to 300 meters, depending on how much light is being bent by this presuppositional 7/6 of a presuppositional radius. Then that's nonsense, because that's not what we see. And there's all sorts of other problems that you're highlighting with the hump that should be in the way and isn't, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, and the horizon is clearly a lot further back than what the model tells us. I mean, 2-point-something miles, it's nonsense. We're seeing that whole mountain almost. And the little tiddy bit that we're not seeing at the bottom, the bit that's behind the layer of mist that they're calling curvature, that's like even in the wrong place. So it appears that this Elsa Craig observation, Rumpus claims that it supports the spherical Earth. It doesn't at all. It totally and utterly poos all over it. And I think there needs to be somebody that can explain this, scientifically at least, because the Rumpus doesn't explain anything. He just, he destroys the conversation by arguing ad homs and calling everybody an idiot and a moron, and that's not what we need. We need somebody that's got the eloquence to be able to discuss this and not get drawn in to the ad hom attacks before he even starts the conversation. Because unfortunately, Rumpus can't do that. So if there's any ball out there that actually knows how this can be explained, that can have a conversation, that's what we need.
I don't know. All that's really left in the conversation by this time is pretty much psychological warfare. Because we got so much evidence that the Earth is flat.
And it's coming in.
Ballers have to get so ridiculous and so imaginary to get it into a ball that it's just, yeah. How much more evidence do they need?
Well,
they're just not accepting it.
Dawn will never accept any evidence unless it comes from a baller. That's what he said yesterday.
It's not just Dawn. Most of these.
I know, but he's the first one I've ever heard say that. I've never heard anybody else say that they'll only accept it if it comes from a baller. So essentially what he's saying is if it appears on CNN, he'll accept it.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's like saying, I won't accept it unless it comes from the priesthood. If the priests say it's correct.
And each baller has their own kind of religious testimony in how far they will let their personal delusion let them take them into it. Just like, what's the name again? Like Milu was just an open proponent for the entire thing looming. He would just say it without any embarrassment. And in that way, each baller has their own kind of personal testimony. So,
Hey, Nummy.
Hello, boys.
Hello,
Hello, Alan.
Hello, Alan.
How are y'all doing today?
Come on, get off me. Come on, get out of my mouth.
To be honest, I'm a bit pissed off, mate, because I just look at people on the ball side, basically denying, blatantly point blank denying that there are things that need to be discussed and dismissing it because it hasn't come from ballers. And I just find it.
What's this angular size stuff?
I'm here. We're here.
What's this
Yeah.
angular size thing that I've just heard you saying about? What's
Hey,
going on with
Jose.
that?
Hey, Jose.
The maths doesn't. The maths doesn't take in. Oh, here we go. I didn't realise the link was public. I hope Arwen's got his knife ready.
yeah, I'm in the back
Do with a
chat.
couple of more placeholders to join just so we don't get trolled.
Come on, Alan B, wake up.
Hey Nathan, is this the bulge you're talking about that you're supposed to see?
Am I talking about balls?
The bulge in the water.
Bulge, right? Yeah, bulge. Yeah.
Is this what you're talking about? Is this what they can't understand that you're supposed to see?
Yeah.
There you go. This is a person. This is orange one. This is a building. This is the bulge that Nathan is talking about. This is what you're supposed to see. That this is what they don't understand.
It's a ball of water on the flat plane. Interesting.
But Anthony, you're talking like about a kind of a parallax, right? That would
No,
happen.
I'm talking that as the mountain goes further away from you, it shrinks in size because of distance. And that doesn't seem to be accounted for in the maths. But Nathan said it's accounted for with zoom lens. And I'm like, well, if it is accounted for in zoom lens, then the bulge becomes an issue, and so does the horizon.
Remember when you guys were arguing about if there was a difference between zooming in and getting closer?
Yeah.
Well, this relates to that, right? Because it's true that zooming in and getting closer are different in terms of that the objects that are between you and another object will change in their relative size, but it's like a parallax effect, right? Due to the angular size change.
Guys, I think I found the potential problem.
If you want to share my screen, Nathan, at any time, I can show you what I'm talking about
Sure,
with
Auntie.
angular size stuff.
You're up.
Oh, right, okay. So I did some filming yesterday. Essentially, this is a really long stretch of road. All the street lights are all the same height. They're pretty evenly spaced. And as you can see, the further in the distance they go, the smaller they get perspectively. Now, it does seem ridiculous that you have to actually show this, because it should be self-evident that something that is this size near to you in the distance is going to look smaller. And when I zoom in, you'll see that that angular size change stays consistent for all of these lights. They don't get any larger. They still stay smaller in comparison to the one next to it.
Right.
Yeah, but with a bit of clever maths.
At some point, can you see where these are converging? Can you see these are coming down at an angle, and the floor seems to be going up at an angle? At some point, these are going to meet. They're going to meet at a point where this is going to be so small, this lamp will be so small, you wouldn't be able to identify what it is. So you might be able to say, oh, I can see a building at 10 miles away. But you put the same building 20 miles away, and it's going to get closer to that convergence point where you won't be able to distinguish what it is. There comes a limit to the equipment that you have to be able to see at long distances.
Yeah. Convergence point.
Exactly, yeah. And it's not going over a curve. It's just that the angular, the size change due to perspective and the angular size will make it so that at some point this will disappear. You will no longer be able to see. If these cars weren't in the way, you know, they would converge to a point and you wouldn't be able to see these. A bit like Soundly with his Lake Pontchartrain stuff.
To be honest,
the heat miraging is there as well.
There's another good point to be made here. the gap between the lampposts is consistently the same all the way down. That's a logical deduction that we can deduce, right? We all accept that the lampposts will be spaced evenly. Now, as it gets further away, the space appears to get smaller and smaller and smaller because, well, it's perspective, right?
Yeah.
What that means is when you have something that's close to the horizon, it will be compressed because what's happening is the whole height of that thing, in this case 1,100 feet, is being squashed into a very small. And the more it's getting further away and the more the angle is becoming horizontal, it's going to be squashed. But that only happens on a plane. That won't happen on a sphere. And we saw that in the...
We get one more random member of the audience to join, just so we're not continually being interrupted by this troll, because we've got 9 members on the panel. So one more person will mean that I don't have to mute every time this troll joins. So yeah, just need one more random stranger. You don't even have to talk and join the discussion.
Squashing and looming.
Yeah, squashing gets flatter. Looming doesn't exist.
I can show you some squashing, if you like, because I went much further to try and see Barrow.
Okay, well then tell me what they mean by looming then, because...
But Nathan, you're saying that, okay, so just to go back to this argument between the issue that Anthony and Nathan are discussing about whether the bulge should be calculated by its angular size, right? Like, how is that accounted for in the curvature calculator math?
No, is it? That was my question.
Well, I'm just curious. Like Nathan, you said it is, right? So what part of that? Like, I'm not. This is an interesting argument, I think.
Well, Nathan said that it was accounted for with the zoom. When she zoomed back into it.
Hey, Alan.
Hello.
Thank you, Alan. That's
Thank
much
you, Alan.
appreciated. Good to have you. I've never been more pleased to see you.
Do you know what, Alan? You're a lifesaver.
What's that?
Well, just because you're taking up the place of that last person so that we can't get the... But I was just wondering if you brought any ice cream, though. It's hot again today.
No, he hasn't come today, Anthony, but I had some at the weekend. I went to Devon.
Oh, did you? You went all the way down to Devon from Leeds?
Yes.
Did you get stuck in storms?
Not really. Went
No,
on the rain.
we had glorious weather, but apparently other parts of the country got storms. Anyway.
So am I still presenting, or have you not?
Yes, yes, Ranty.
Oh right, I'm still presenting. Right, okay. So this is squashed Barrow. Essentially, you can still make out the buildings, even to the point of where the gaps are between each building. There's a gap there. There's a gap here. This is. I've got another video that's a bit closer to this, so you can actually tell it's the same thing. But that is the tippy tops, or the squashed version of what Barrow and the stuff that we've been looking at is. The distance is in incredible distance on that. I'll show you from. I'll put a line in from here. So these buildings here. Now, normally, we already know that we can't see. If we're in this location here, we shouldn't see the buildings at sea level. So I went all this extra distance, kept going, all the way down to here. 26.4 miles away. 26.4 miles. And I'll show you, it's on the video as well. And I also got some still shots. I'll just start myself at the start. This is where I am in relation to the sea. And this is where, to be fair, I didn't even see it with the camera because it's got a very small optical thing that you can look at. And it was only when I was looking through the video afterwards that I noticed I'd captured it. But this is the tippy tops of those buildings. And if I do the curve calcs on that, let's see what the curve calcs on that was. 26.4. 26.4. Viewer height, I'm going to say, was about 4 feet. So hidden should have been 382 feet. Okay. And we know that the Devonshire Dock Hall, the height of that building is only, where are we? 167 feet. I can't see it now. There we go. 167 feet. That is the height of the Devonshire Dock Hall.
So it should be twice hidden.
twice hidden. Yeah, but I mean, I can prove it's the same buildings just because of these gaps. I've got another video from slightly nearer where we see it much clearer. Where are we? It's on, I think it's this one here. So yeah,
basically, basically, it's another example where the refraction just so happens to make it look flat.
Yeah, well, what happened is the further we got away, the narrower these buildings seem to get. I mean, you could still make out the entirety of the building. I mean, you can even see these other buildings here just to the right, but these aren't normally the same height. They're now more compressed. But you can see the gap between the two buildings that I was talking about. Now, this was from an elevation of 16 feet, and I'll show you where I was here. This was, where was I now? Let's see. So it was down here. This was where I was from here. So I'll just click that line. Hopefully the measurement will be ready for that measurement. 23.7. So 23.7, an elevation of around about 16 feet. I'll put that in. Where are we? 23.7 elevation, 16 feet. And yeah, hidden 235. 235 should have been hidden. Again, the Devonshire Dock building itself is only 167 feet. There is the building. It's right next to the water, as you can see. There's the building. So essentially all of that should have been gone. And this is it on the video. Well, this section on the left is the Devonshire Dock Hall. I've got some still shots of this area too. But what you're forgetting is that to believe that we live on a ball, we should always have that hump of water in the way. You know, that's just fundamental to the ball. You know, you can't be looking across water like this and seeing these buildings, no matter what time I go, high tide, low tide, further and further away, I can see them all the time. I went and did some more videoing, some of the wind farms. I'll show you a video for these wind farms as well, actually, because you shouldn't see any of these wind farms. Where is it? I think it was... Just got to find the right video. Sorry, just bear with me.
All right, you reload that globe-destroying gun, Ranty. Keep them coming.
Oh, I've got like loads of stuff. Hey, here's another one. Look at this. Look at this. This is Barrow again. This is from essentially all these buildings you shouldn't see. I'll show you where I was in a minute. There's Barrow Town Hall. This is at high tide. Obviously, there's all the buildings. I should be able to, if I zoom out, I might be able to show you where I was. Yeah, there we go. Right next to the water at high tide. And I'm much further away than I normally do my video in from. So, yeah, so about 500 meters this way is where I would normally do the filming from. This is me lying down on the steps, taking the video from there. I'll show you those buildings again. There we go. There's the docks. You shouldn't see these. I can keep showing you the curve calcs all the time for these because you shouldn't see any of this. Ridiculous to believe that we live on a ball spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. Retarded.
What's more ridiculous, believing that we live on a ball when there's so much evidence that it's not a ball, or accepting and believing that the refraction always appears to make it just so the case that it's flat? I mean, that's just like the perfect just so story, right?
Well, that's what I brought up yesterday. I had that question. Anthony, you showed that one snapshot of the lighthouse light flickering, right?
Yeah.
Why don't we get that at night? Because there's no refraction at night. Right?
Not too sure, but it is.
I mean, overall
a little bit colder.
The problem,
Right.
the problem is at night time when the sun's not there. If it's been a warm day, and most days we have evaporation, what happens is the condensation that forms as a result of the lack of heat creates the condensation process, which appears to sit on the surface of the water.
Night fog.
It appears to look like a cloud. Now, it doesn't do it every single night, but it appears to do it most nights. It's almost like the water fails to absorb the moisture and it sits above it. So it acts as obstruction that they all call curvature, which is exactly the obstruction that Al Kay claimed and documented in his video. So at nighttime, the refraction layer is a lot less, I agree. However, it is still there, but it's not the curve that we're seeing. But they claim it's curved because it's obstruction of any form, so therefore it's curved. But you and I both know that that obstruction has to be in a certain place for it to be curved.
Sure.
And it's not.
Sure, but what I'm suggesting is that if we get the light to flicker the way you still, if we can see the light at night, that's my point. So it's a matter of timing. But ultimately, my point is as well then that if you because as I mentioned before in Al K's video, is that at the beginning of his video you can see the lighthouse. He's got a picture of the lighthouse that you can see from whatever distance it is.
Yeah,
and
it's
so
30 miles. And he was
okay,
on the
so
high road. But I asked Al, would he pinpoint where he was? Because I know the distance, but I don't know what the height is because I don't know his location. And what he did was he pointed around to it and showed it on the camera and said that's where I was. And then he showed it on an aerial point, but he didn't pinpoint where it was. And I asked him to specifically give me the GPS so I could identify it exactly. And then we could argue about the height. But ultimately, he hasn't done it. He's ignored the question. But I wanted to see what the curve calc said about the lighthouse from 30 miles at whatever the observation height that it said on Google Earth, for example. Because it's not going to support that either. Now, he hasn't given me that information, so we have to kind of guess. And that's not fair on him. But he won't surrender the information voluntarily. So perhaps we should just do it based on what his video says, because that would make him look like a liar.
I'm still curious about how it is proportionality is factored into the curve calculator.
Yeah, I agree. I don't agree with Nathan on that. It doesn't appear to be in the curve calculator, but Nathan said it's to do with the zoom on the camera.
No, I'm not sure.
But that doesn't...
I'm just saying, like, what part of the equation on the, say, the metabump calculator is actually representing the proportionality of the based on distance, right? That's what's being claimed. Like, that's what you said, Nathan, right?
No, I said that it's saying how much of the height should be seen. So if you can see it, regardless of how big it seems to be in your zoom length, that's how much they claim you should see, 200 to 300 meters.
Yeah, but Anthony's saying it's based on like an orthic kind of math, right?
It seems to be orthographic rather than perspective, yeah.
Yeah, and that would be true if you're using the naked eye. But he's correct. If you use the naked eye, from a perspective point of view alone, it's completely gone. But then you zoom in on it.
That's a separate issue about whether you're zoomed in or not, right?
It's more like a resolution issue.
No, it's more about
but that's exactly it.
Proportionality based on distance.
Yeah, proportionality, which is perspective.
Yeah.
As something goes further away from you, it gets smaller in height to the observer.
But they're not claiming that either way. They're not saying how small it should appear. They're just saying how much of it should appear above the horizon. 200 to 300 meters of it, according to their maths.
When they say that, though, are they basing it on a reduced size because of the distance, or are they basing it on its height from the observer when it's right in front of you?
Oh, well, that's a totally different question. I think it's entirely based on hijacking perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys do agree then, because I think
that was my point. Sorry, maybe I didn't explain it well, or maybe just Nathan had a blonde moment, but it appears that we're now on the same wavelength.
I said at the start, I'm playing devil's advocate for what they would say it claims. I don't agree with the maths. It's absolutely preposterous and based on a presupposition. And in terms of where it's come from, yeah, it's come from hijacking perspective.
Yeah, this is an interesting question, right, to me, like that Anthony's raising, which is like, if he's right, then there's this whole other problem. Yeah, there's a whole other problem with the curve calculator if Anthony's right. I mean, I haven't taken apart the equations, but I'm just saying, like, if proportionality isn't represented in the equation, then it would be based on what he's like describing as an orthographic.
Well, I tried to illustrate the problem with the horizon at 2 miles of a 38-mile observation. That would mean that from that 2-mile horizon, everything beyond that point should be beginning to go behind the dip. But the amount of exponential curve on 38 miles compared to a 2-mile horizon is huge.
Yeah.
So it doesn't appear to be proportionate, and therefore perspective doesn't appear to be addressed. And
no, but it's not really relevant because it just gives the overall height, the percentage, basically.
No, it's very relevant.
Yeah, it is very relevant.
No, but
I don't know.
It just says how much of the literal height is obscured by the bulge, so-called.
Yeah,
But
but it's the literal height subject to
it is not
38
like
miles.
how high it really looks. It's just
Yeah, Arwen, it's
but
the
it's
height.
supposed to
just
be
a technical.
It's
But
the
you're
height.
supposed to be deriving that from looking at the Metabunk calculator. You're supposed to be deriving what's going to be seen, not
Correct.
what
Correct.
is, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, well, in that sense, it is completely flawed because it never works out because things aren't obscured.
Right, but we're just talking about like, is there a kind of fundamental error in how this is being calculated? And I don't know.
Yeah, it presupposes a globe,
No.
and it's not there.
Separate from that,
That's
even
the fundamental error.
But this is a separate issue. We allow the presupposition, just for argument's sake. Is there then still a fundamental error in the calculation that's based on the lack of accounting for the proportionality over distance?
Yeah, I think the two are one.
Which is what I believe is the case, because you can't get the horizon and the bulge to be proportionate to the drop if you try and make it proportionate.
I think the two are one and the same thing. You can't include perspective if they are hijacking what perspective does in reality to presuppose a curve is there. So to include it would be nigh on impossible.
But then you have to accept that the hijacking perspective, which is easy for us to say, but they're never going to accept that. Therefore, they must include it and account for it.
But we're demonstrating it, or you are. Ranty certainly is.
Yeah, I'm not sure that most people would even get the point, because Arwen doesn't seem to get it, and it's blatantly obvious now that I've pointed. For me, I don't know why I didn't spot it before, but now I realise.
I think I know exactly what you're talking about, Anthony, but I'm not sure the other people here are quite getting that. We have to articulate this point better, I think.
I was going to say maybe it's to do with the presentation of it. The way I presented it perhaps might not be the best way of doing it, but now that I realise there's an issue, it's just finding the right words to make my point. But it appears that they're not reducing the observation, the target, relative to the observer. They're applying the maths to it as though it was right in front of you at 1,000 feet. Now, obviously, when it's 38 miles away, it ain't 1,000 feet. It's a pixel. So it's like, well, that needs to be accounted for in the maths. It doesn't appear to be there.
And with that, I'm going to say first and foremost, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the debating panel for making this debate possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in. If you hated this video, you know exactly what to do. But if you liked it, be sure to hit the like button. Maybe consider subscribing and sharing with a friend. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video. Oh, you want to get in at the end, do you? Come on then.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!